Welcome guys, welcome back for another video on Minko's Corner. It's yours truly, Minko here. Today we're continuing our series on History of Russia, part 4. One more part, and I think afterwards we have another video afterwards. After part 5 there's the Revolution, 1917, and we're done. So yeah, I hope you liked the video. Last video we watched Catherine the Great and her rise and what's really, as I said, even the thumbnail that I made was, she was German. That blew me away. I didn't expect that she was German. Like out of all the things that you could have told me that she was German, I would never pick it out of 100. And now I think we're going, and then we watched Alexander the First and how his father looked like a 15-year-old and whatever. Now we're in the 19th century, guys. We're coming up. First World War coming up soon. And yeah, this was History of Russia Part 4.
(1825). Victory over Napoleon had confirmed Russia's status as a world power.
Crimea is
but
coming.
there was discontent within Russia amongst intellectuals and army officers, some of whom had formed secret societies to plot the overthrow of Russia's autocratic system. When Emperor Alexander was succeeded, not as expected by his brother Constantine, but by a younger brother Nicholas, one of these secret societies used the confusion
Okay, Constantine is busted. His face, ugh. But imagine how much different the world would be if instead of going with the 20th century with Nicholas II, who the guy's a fucking moron. Imagine if we got Constantine as the brother who inherited the throne, how different everything
to
could
launch a
be.
military coup.
Ooh.
But the Decemberist revolt, as it became known, was defeated by loyalist troops, and the ringleaders were hanged. Others were sent into internal exile in Siberia. This was to become a common sentence for criminals and political prisoners in Tsarist Russia. Nicholas went on to adopt an official doctrine of orthodoxy, autocracy, and nationality. The state was to rest on the pillars of church, Tsar, and the Russian national spirit, a clear rejection of the values of European liberalism. In the Caucasus, border clashes with Persia led to a war which ended in complete Russian victory. The Treaty of Turkmenchay forced Persia to cede all its territories in the region to Russia and pay a large indemnity. Russian support for Greece in its war of independence against the Ottomans led to war between Russia and the Ottoman Empire. Russian victory brought further gains in the Black Sea region. A Polish revolt, led by young army officers, was crushed by Russian troops. Alexander Pushkin, Russia's greatest poet, was shot in a duel, and 2 days later died from his wound.
That's the end of a poet. You live a life, you create poems, and you die in a freaking duel, man. That's badass. Dying in a duel, you died, but, you died a cool death. Most people die shitty deaths. Gangrene, especially at that time, the century, you died in a duel. Commendable, it's commendable.
Nicholas sent troops to help put down a Hungarian revolt against Austrian rule. The emperor's willingness to help suppress liberal revolts won him the nickname the gendarme, or policeman of Europe.
Yeah.
Russia's first major railway was opened, connecting St. Petersburg and Moscow. Alexander Herzen, a leading intellectual critic of Russia's autocracy, emigrated to London, where he continued to call for reform in his homeland. He'd later be described as the father of Russian socialism. The Ottoman Empire, now known as the sick man of Europe, reacted to further Russian provocations by
I didn't know the Ottoman Empire was known as the sick man of Europe in 1853.
declaring war.
I know it was known
The
By that,
Russian Black Sea Fleet
in
inflicted
the
a
First World
crushing
War.
defeat on the Turks at the Battle of Sinope. But Britain and France, alarmed at Russia's southern expansion and potential control of Constantinople, declared war on Russia. The Allies
Crimean
landed
War.
troops in Crimea
Yeah.
and besieged the naval base of Sevastopol,
Yeah.
which fell after a grueling year-long siege. In the Baltic, British and French warships blockaded the Russian capital, St. Petersburg. Russia was forced to sign a humiliating peace, withdraw its forces from the Black Sea, and put on hold plans for further southern expansion. Nicholas I was succeeded by his son, Alexander II. The Crimean War had exposed Russia's weakness. The country lagged far behind its European rivals in industry, infrastructure, and military power. So Alexander, unlike his father, decided to embrace reform. The most obvious sign of Russia's backwardness was
Serfs.
serfdom.
Yeah, that's fucked up.
According to the 1857 census, more than a third of Russians were serfs,
Jesus.
forced to work their master's land with few rights, restrictions on movement, and their status passed down to their children. They were slaves in all but name. In 1861, Alexander II abolished serfdom in Russia. He was hailed as the liberator. But in reality, most former serfs remained trapped in servitude and poverty. Alexander's reforms would continue with the creation of the zemstva, provincial assemblies with authority over local affairs, including education and social welfare. In the Far East, Russia forced territorial concessions from a weakened China, leading to the founding of Vladivostok, Russia's major Pacific port.
Yeah.
Another uprising by Poles and Lithuanians against Russian rule was once more crushed by the Russian army. In the Caucasus, Russia's long and brutal war against local tribes came to an end, with their leaders swearing oaths of loyalty to the Tsar. In Central Asia, the Russian Empire was gradually expanding southwards. Russian armies defeated the Emirate of Bukhara and the Khanate of Khiva, and by the 1880s, Russia had conquered most of what was then called Turkestan, today the countries of Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, and Turkmenistan.
Yeah.
Imperial rivalry in Central Asia between Russia and Britain led to the Great Game, a 19th century version of the Cold War.
Yeah, I heard about that.
Centered on Afghanistan, diplomats and
Fucking Afghanistan, man. This country has survived everything. Everything. I mean, since when? Since 1865, people have tried to conquer it, impose their rule, and
spies on both sides tried to win local support, extend their own influence, and limit the expansion of their rival, while avoiding direct military confrontation. Russia decided to sell Alaska to America for $7.2 million. Many Americans thought it was a waste of money.
man,
Gold and oil were only discovered there much later.
$4 trillion.
Leo
That's the
Tolstoy's
worst
War
thing ever
and
did.
Peace was published, still regarded as one of the world's greatest works of literature.
I
The
have to
late
read this
19th
book.
century was a cultural golden age for Russia, a period of literary greats and outstanding composers.
Yeah.
Russia,
Tolstoy,
in support
Tchaikovsky.
of nationalist revolts in the Balkans against Ottoman rule,
Yeah.
went to war with the
Balkan
Ottoman
Wars,
Empire
or
once
actually
more.
the Russia-Turkish War.
Russian troops crossed the Danube, then with Bulgarian help fought to secure the vital Shipka Pass. Then they launched a bloody 5-month siege of Plevna in Bulgaria.
Yeah.
Russia and her allies finally won victory, with their troops threatening Constantinople itself. But at the Congress of Berlin, Russia bowed to international pressure and accepted limited gains, in a settlement that also led to independence for Romania, Serbia, Montenegro, and later Bulgaria. Meanwhile, within Russia, radical political groups were increasingly frustrated by Alexander II's limited reforms.
People are never happy, man. That's something I've noticed. No matter how many reforms the guy does, the guy, he liberalized he freed serfs, which is a huge political move. I mean, it was time, 1870, Jesus Christ. But there were slaves in the U.S. in 1860, so who am I to judge? But it was time for serfdom. I mean, it was brutal. He did so many great things for Russia. He expanded its power, its prestige, and people, we want more. You know, if I wasn't, I'm not
There were
going to do this.
several failed attempts to assassinate the emperor, but
I mean, if you're emperor, how would you feel? You do all those reforms for the people. You create the Zemstva. You do all those things, and then people rebel again. I mean,
he prepared to approve new constitutional reforms. He was killed in St. Petersburg by a bomb thrown by members of the People's Will, one of the world's first modern terrorist groups.
Yeah, people are bitches.
This act of violence would lead only to a new era of repression.
Yeah, what the fuck do you expect, bitch?
Did you know all...
Like, if I was the emperor, I would fucking kill them. Dude, I'd be so pissed off. Like, what the fuck do you want, bitch? Anyways, I hope you like my reaction. I would be pissed. Like, if I was the emperor, I did all that, and people are still like, what the fuck do you want? What do you want more? And then, I think one of the worst things that ever happened to Russia was the Soviet Union. Because, yes, it grew in power and prestige and influence, but the stagnation economically and culturally speaking was incredible. Because from the 19th century coming into the 20th, Russia was about to become a superpower if it was able to industrialize. Actually, the Germans in the First World War were afraid that the Russians, if left to completely industrialize by 1916, the Germans would be unable to defeat them. Anyways, I hope you liked my reaction. If you did, like, subscribe. See you guys next time.